Welcome, everybody. Glad you're with us here today. Welcome to the Evolution Center here at Lightworker. We're blessed to have you with you. Tonight, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to be working with part of what we call the fundamental series of Lightworker. Basically, the series of all the base information, the most important things that Spirit wants you to know. So tonight we're going to be working with one of the most important pieces and one of the first lessons that I had to learn about this work. We're going to learn tonight about discernment and what the group has to say about this incredible new art that works tremendously well in the higher vibrations of the new planet Earth. So first of all, let me tell you that discernment is one of the most difficult words to translate throughout the world. We have had problems with translators finding the proper word for discernment almost all over the world, almost unanimously. So it's been kind of interesting for us to see how this works. So let me share with you what we do know and what the group says about discernment, because they say in order for you to have a real base of your own power, the first thing we have to become aware of is that we are powerful creators, and that we have a responsibility to create, and that we have a reason for doing this. The other part about it is we'll find out a little bit more about how, but one of the most important parts is that in helping to learn the art of discernment, we stop learning how to give our power away freely to all the things that we normally give it away to. So we're going to speak a little bit about that. We'll share with you a couple of the things here that we've got to share with you. Let me start off here with the PowerPoint just so we can kind of be on the same page together and kind of share a little bit of what this is about. Of course, this planet is changing very rapidly. We're shifting more right now. Most of us are shifting more right now in our lives than we have probably in the last century. So most of you are moving, I love to use this example, but most of you are moving in your lives more in the last 6 months than you have in the last 6 lifetimes. So we need to become aware that the planet is changing. Our own environment is changing. The way we do everything is starting to shift. And we're starting to be able to carry much more light in our own physical bodies than we ever have been able to do before. So one of the things we want to become aware of is that the planet is changing, and this is one of the reasons why discernment is becoming so important. Let me share with you why. In the 12 paradigms, which are actually the material from the spiritual psychology book, in the 12 paradigms, and we will be talking about them individually, but discernment is the 7th paradigm. And in that, they simply say, learn to practice the art of discernment in making choices without judgment. And this is one of the big key pieces that I want to share with you here, that in the lower vibrations of who we have been all this time, we have been using judgment. We've been using judgment quite well. We have to judge something as good, bad, right, wrong, up, down, all the things that we have needed in the lower vibrations of who we have been. So what discernment is discernment is actually replacing judgment in the higher vibrations of the new planet Earth, whereas we have always used judgment up to this point. And the group says there is a problem with judgment because judgment requires labels, and we have been giving our power away to labels for far too long. I'll tell you more about that in just a few minutes. Let's go back to this for just a second because I want to share with you what they say about it. And it says, to monitor carefully what enters your field and to be discriminating about choosing only those things and ideas that complement your energy. Now, those are probably the most important things. In other words, what we are looking for is if it resonates with us, and this was the group's original words, if it resonates with your heart, then take it as your own, and if it doesn't, leave it without judgment. Don't call it bad. Because the moment you label something as good or bad, you have placed attachment on it, you have placed labels on it, you have placed judgment and all the other pieces. You've become intertwined with that piece at that point, and it's very difficult for you to pull back. So the idea is if you don't want something or don't like something, simply say, it is not for me at this time. Okay, so I'm going to get to, since I'm here in my Evolution Center, my office, I get to actually come over here and take one of the very first books that was ever printed, so I can kind of use that as an illustration. Very first books that was ever printed of mine, I should say, of the groups. So anyway, and this was the first copy off the press of Remember. But we're all familiar with this because we go to bookstores all the time. And typically what you do is you'll read the back of the book. Sometimes the spine or something will catch your attention. You'll pick it up, and sometimes you'll read the inside flap a little bit, or you'll read some of the stuff on the back cover. And it'll either resonate with you or it won't. Now, a lot of times also we take a book home, and this illustrates a good choice of judgment versus discernment. Because judgment means making a blanket label. Discernment is going to be much more discriminating, and that's probably the best word to use. We're going to be discriminating about what we spend our energy on. We're going to consciously choose where and how to spend our energy and what to bring in our field that resonates with us. We all know that we're a vibration. We're vibrating. And if you bring something into your field that causes disharmony or a discord with your own vibration, then you have a problem with it. It takes away from your overall energy. I'm that way with rap music. Sometimes if I hear loud rap music that doesn't seem to have a tone, even though I do a lot of drumming and so forth, it drives me crazy. It's a discord to me. Yet there are many people that love rap music and many people that actually kind of harmonize with that and take that to the next level. So it's not about rap music being right or wrong. It's about, is it right or wrong for you? Does it add to you and take away from you? They're hollering at me for using those right or wrong words a minute ago, so I got to kind of back up and take that back. But it's not, is it right or wrong for you, but is it add to you or does it take away from you? So we go to the bookstore. We pick a book. Now you take it home, and you start getting into the book, and you start reading, and you go, okay, that was really cool. I like that illustration. That makes sense. You go through the whole thing, and pretty soon you go, I don't know if I agree with that. That was, I really like the first part of the book because this is just like, oh, magic. So anyway, you read through the whole thing, and finally you get to the end, you go, this is really stupid here. I don't know what I saw in this guy in the first place, but I didn't, and you throw the whole book out. That is judgment. And it's very difficult to do because we are taught to judge. We are taught to make yes and no decisions in a field of polarity. We're now moving out of that field of polarity, and it's very important for us to look at the higher, bigger picture. That's where discernment comes in. This is where we take a little bit of everything and only take those pieces that resonate with us. So with judgment, you throw the whole book out. With discernment, you get to keep the first chapters that really resonated with your heart. And you don't have to throw even that part out. And that takes practice. It's not easy to do. And I'll tell you that right from the beginning. I've got to put this back. This is a very important book to me. So anyway, that's part of what we get to do as what we're doing is we're learning this art of discernment. So I'll tell you a little bit more about it here. Let's go ahead and finish this up. We do not have to be a part of everything. Rather, if we choose only what feeds and nurtures us, we have more to give others. It goes back to feeding yourself or filling yourself first, which is part of what we're learning to do. In the book, Welcome Home, we have this comparison chart. It's just a fun little way to look at things, but I want to kind of share with you about it because when we talk about the Earth evolving, the Earth is moving faster than she's probably ever moved before. And our own evolution is taking forms that we've never seen before like this. So it's absolutely incredible to see how much change this is going on. But take a look at some of this. Take a look at what's going on here because you've got a primary motivation of survival. And now we're not even worried about surviving anymore. So, you talk about the experience of time. We go from linear time to circular or now time. We go from polarity to good, bad, right, wrong, to just down to cause and effect. It doesn't make any difference whether it's right or wrong. What cause and effect does it have? We talked a lot about the work paradigm. We're actually going to do an entire one of these fundamental series on the changes in the work paradigm so that you can see kind of how that looks and where that's going from here. We'll also talk about your expressions of truth. The tools of truth are probably the most difficult part. This part right here, because the tools of truth, in discovering truth for each one of us, we have used judgment. And now that we're moving firmly into the fifth dimension, we're going to replace that judgment with discernment. And these are going to be some of the key pieces here that can help all of us to work with this energy a little bit more and to see a little bit more about what we are capable of doing exactly ourselves. Now, let me tell you some of the story about that. Here, I'll change cameras so we can get a little more comfortable here with this one. There we go. So anyway, I've got a little more space here to tell you about this, but I want to tell you about a story because this is really how discernment came to me. The group actually mentioned to me in the very beginning discernment, and I want to share with you how that came up because it turned out to be one of the most key pieces that they have used. I'll bring this mic up just a little bit more there we go. It's one of the key pieces, and what happened in the beginning when I first started channeling, I was channeling in a group in a room full of other people. It was actually at a Cryon message board, and this is where I walked in there completely unfamiliar with anything metaphysical, and I walked in there and just said, teach me, whatever you want to teach me. And they taught me Reiki, they taught me Access, they taught me all these fun forms of healing, and they all started to channel, and people were starting to channel in this room, and all of a sudden, I started to channel. And it was really amazing, and I got a lot of support from this group in the very beginning because we were all trying to help each other and better each other. And I was kind of the new kid on the block. I came in there with practically no knowledge at all. So they all started talking to their guides, and they all started getting the names of their guides, and I was never able to get a name of a guide or anything. I think I heard them, but I'm not quite sure. It was kind of one of those things where I was just kind of pretending to be there with everybody. And then all of a sudden I started to get this information from the group, and I didn't doubt what I was getting. We all doubted in the beginning because when you start to channel, when you really start to channel, it feels like you. That's part of the problem with channeling. It's part of the reason that a lot of people don't channel. They think they're making it up. The group actually says there's two reasons. Number one, you think you're making it up and you don't trust yourself. So you don't trust it and you don't practice it. So those are the two main reasons or the two main focuses why people don't channel. So here we are in this room, in this message board, where we're able to do a little bit of that and to be able to get this and practice with each other and play with this. And we did, and we started doing this, and it's not long after this that really I started clearly hearing from the group and started doing things. In fact, the first Beacons of Light message that ever went out in February of 1996, and it went out to this group in this message board. Wonderful people that were in there. We still get to hear from some of them from time to time. The other person that began channeling in that message board was Jeff Hoppe. So with Tobias and with the Crimson Circle, and of course now he channels Saint Germain. But good friend of mine, and this is kind of where we kind of got started with the whole thing. So anyway, it was really interesting for me. So I started channeling right away. I didn't really know what to think of it, but it was pretty obvious to me that this was way above my knowledge. Furthermore, on top of that, I decided to put this out on a monthly basis and to start regularly channeling, even though I had no knowledge here at all. I had a gentleman call me at that time, a really interesting story, but he had written a book on channeling. He's a very famous channeler himself. So many of you know that I'm friends with Lee Carroll. It was not Lee Carroll, it was somebody else. And he had written a book on channeling about how you do it, what you need to do, how it works, and everything else. And I got to talk with him one day, and he says, do you need some advice? Do you want? And I have this old beautiful story that I tell about this whole thing. But one of the things he told me that was very important to me at this point when I first started the channel was he says, Steve, it could be the bad guys. So he says, you got to be careful here because it could be the bad guys, and you don't want to channel the bad guys. Well, first time I knew that you could even channel bad guys, so I wasn't too much aware of it. But I said, well, what do you do? And he says, well, just ask them. It's a rule. They have to tell you. So they have to tell you whether they're the good guys or the bad guys. So just ask them, have them identify themselves, and that'll take care of the problem. So I said, good. Oh, no problem. So in the beginning of the channeled messages, it was very difficult for me. I felt very awkward about it. I felt in the beginning like I was making a lot of it up. Probably the biggest piece that I had that made me feel otherwise was my father. My father was alive and absolutely read every piece that I ever wrote in the very beginning before he died. And he would call me up and say, you know, you can really tell here, Steve, where the group came in, and you can tell where you came in, and you can tell where they blended together, because he really knew me intimately well, of course, and he was able to see the rest of it. So it was really validating for me to have my father not only see the channel, but to honor the fact that I was different than the channel, and it wasn't just coming from me or something I was making up. So I had a tremendous boost from my dad, of all people at that time. That's why I dedicated the first book to him. He was actually a light worker that tried to do this way ahead of time. So I don't want to get too far off the story. I can talk all day about Dad in the beginning of channeling, but this was very important. I went back to the group and I said, I need to know some things, and I need to know 3 things. I want to know what your names are. I want to know what your rank is, or what's your place in heaven, and I want to know what dimension you live in, because I'd heard things about dimensions. So, you know, I asked him 3 questions that I thought sounded very metaphysical, even though I wasn't really sure what any of those were. But I was looking forward to it because it meant that I could go back into this chat room, I could go back into this message board, and I could tell people who I was channeling for a change, because I wasn't able to say anything before that. I just wasn't able to say who it was I was channeling. So went back to them, and they said, you've asked 3 questions. We're going to give you 3 answers. It's none of your business, it's none of your business, and it's none of your business. So right away, I remember my conversation earlier, and I said, okay, well, you must be the bad guys. And I told them, I actually verbally said to them, I said, you know, if you're not going to tell me who you are, I cannot channel you. And they said something to me that I'll never forget, because they said it with the most incredible love and understanding. I mean, they weren't angry, they weren't frustrated, they weren't. Here I was shutting the door on them, and all they said to me was, we honor all of your choices, no matter what they are. And then it became silent. And I didn't hear them the way I normally do. When I think of something now, they're right there on top of me, but they basically left me alone at that point. And I walked around for several days with this big hole in my heart, trying, you know, but also because of the fact that here I am in the message board and I'm learning how to channel, but I can't tell anybody who I'm channeling. What a frustrating experience that was. And now it looks like the channel's closed. So now it turns out to channel the bed. It's kind of like you go fishing, but you don't catch a good fish. You catch one you have to throw back. So anyway, I was very upset about the whole thing, and really missing a part, because I felt so much love when I was channeling. I felt so much for me. It was benefiting me tremendously. So I went back to him after about 3 days, and Barbara tells the story of me walking around the house, basically in depression, even though I've never experienced depression before. But anyway, after about 3 days, I walked back to the group, and I said, I got an idea. I go, knock, knock, are you still there? And they came back, and they said, of course we're here. We would never leave you. And I said, if you won't tell me who you are, then tell me why you won't tell me who you are. And I thought, oh, this is great. This is good. I can trick them into telling me something that was... And they laughed. They thought it was hilarious that I would come up with that wonderful situation. And they also became excited. And they said, that is the perfect question. And that is the question we would love to answer. And we're going to answer it with one word: discernment. We don't want to give you a label, because humans put too much into the labels. They give their power away to labels all the time. And we're finding out on planet Earth it's not working anymore. So what they were offering was something entirely different. And they said, we want you to take everything that comes through you and run it through your own filters of your own heart, and only take the pieces that resonate with you. Leave the rest without judgment, but leave the rest as not for me at this time. And I took this in, and I'm going, okay, this makes sense. I understand completely with what you're saying, but as having a bit of a marketing background myself, that puts you in a very difficult business situation of calling this the group. In fact, I never did call it the group. I never did come up actually with that label. It was kind of a default label that we put on it. Because I would go back into this message board and I would write these monthly messages, and people would ask me, they would say, you know, who are you channeling? And I'd say, I don't know. It's just this, I was aware it wasn't a single entity, but I'd say, I don't know. It's just this group of entities back over my shoulder, back over here. At the time, I started reading the Cryon books, and I started actually going to a couple of Cryon channels. Marvelous, but it was also a single entity with a very strong personality. So you could kind of tell that, you know, that was all coming from one persona. I didn't have that same feeling. And it was a little more confusing for me because I was very much aware that it was multiples and that it changed. Sometimes somebody moved to the front to say something important. Sometimes somebody moved back. So it was a little harder for me to really keep track of all that. And I wanted to go in too and just tell people what it was. But as a result of this started very slowly. And I do believe that our work with Lightworker, even though it's been going for 14 years, I believe that it did not take off for a long time because of the fact that people did not trust that name, the group. And I do believe that they still look at it with the labels. Here's where the word the group came from. They would come back to me and say this group over my shoulder, and then somebody would say, well, what does your group say about that? And I'd come back and say, well, this group says this. And that's where the group actually came from. It was kind of a default answer. But they didn't want to use the labels. Later, about 3 or 4 years later, they actually told me they were from the angelic realm, and they were from the heart of what we call the family of Michael. And that's all that they would say. They would not tell me their names or their positions or what they did. They said we have huge misunderstandings of it anyway, and most of the time we have to change things in heaven to fit earthly expectations, is basically what they said. We'll talk about that sometime too. We'll tell the Lucifer story because it's a really beautiful story from the group that they talk about. But we wanted to share this with you about discernment. Because discernment is a whole new level of working with things without having to give our power away. Now, if you go back to the triality, and you know that things used to be only light and dark, good and bad, up and down, right and wrong, all the rest of it, and we only see in that flat line, that is changing to a field of triality where we now have a new point, a new connection, if you will, to our own higher self, to be able to hear our own spirit carry more of our light in our own body. And because of that, we have now not a flat view, but we have more of an overview to be able to see more of the overall piece. It's no secret to tell you where this is going. It never was a flat line. It's not even a triangle. It's really a big circle. We're just getting little new points on this circle that allow us to see things in new ways. So we ask you to start looking at discernment. Instead of calling it right or wrong, good or bad, up or down, black or white, love or fear, simply back off, take a view from the higher self, and see what adds to you at that moment. And see how you can start bringing in only pieces that add to your being and to your joy and to your passion. These are the things that are going to help not only you step into your higher vibrations, but also work to help all the people around you and to help in those areas. We'll move this back over here for just a moment because I want to share with you one last piece over here. Here we go. Oh, I guess I went the wrong way. There we go. Anyway, wanted to share with you a little piece about the final part about discernment, because it's important to keep in mind we're not perfect human beings. We know we're going to make mistakes. We know we're going to do things sometimes that don't make sense to people. We know that we have a huge impact on this world sometimes that we don't really always know what that impact is or what that's like. But sometimes it's very difficult for us to see the effect on the world around us. If you will not worry so much about the actual impact that you have on the world and worry about clarifying your own vibration, this is a time where you'll be able to take this energy very clearly for yourself and to start to use it in ways that you've never used it before, starting with yourself and starting with working with the energy of your own discernment, of bringing things in to you that help make you whole. One last piece I'll tell very quickly because it was a really beautiful story. We were asked to speak at the United Nations in New York City. We've actually presented 5 different times at the United Nations on 2 different continents, 3 times in Vienna, Austria at the VIC, which is the Vienna International Community, which houses the United Nations, the Atomic Energy Agency, and many other agencies. And then the headquarters in New York we spoke at twice. During one of the entrances there, we had a lady who was hosting us who really was not that familiar with our work, and the first time we went there, she said she did her best to introduce us. And we were there in front of, I think, about 75, 80 people in the room. The room was full, so I don't even know how many people were in there, but it was really a nice place to be. A lot of excitement, some faces like anywhere that we knew well and some that we didn't. And she comes in and I started to prepare to channel because we only have an hour from the time we get in there to the time we have to leave. So we get in to do the channel, and we're sitting there, and she says, "This is Steve Rother, and he channels the group. The group's from the angelic realm, and they see everything, and they know everything, so listen to every word they say." And we began the channel right away. The group came in immediately and says, "Please do not listen to every word we say." And they gave a beautiful message on channel, and they gave a beautiful message on discernment, and about taking only those pieces that resonate with you. We know it's hard sometimes because society, our lives, our families, our friends expect certain things from us, and we tend to go in those directions just to keep the norm and not shake the world, so to speak. But it's time to start shaking the world. It's time to also start looking very fearlessly and openly at a lot of different possibilities for expressing truth on planet Earth. It's no longer limited to judgment. Now, we can honestly use discernment. This has been part of the fundamental series here at Lightworker, and we will offer as many of these to you as we can in order to help you understand our fundamental base understandings of life from the group. Espavo, everyone. Thank you.